After school, Anna grabbed a snack and went upstairs to her room. A few moments later, the doorbell rang, and she heard her dad open the front door. To her surprise, he called her down, saying it was for her. It was Boy B. She knew exactly who he was, but couldn't wrap her head around why he would be there for her. They definitely weren't friends. Anna's dad watched her walk up to the boy, and they began to speak quietly. She ran back upstairs, grabbed her sweatshirt, and told her dad she was going out, and that she'd be back really soon. That was the last time he would see his daughter alive. Welcome to Crime Cafe. Today's case is going to be taking us to Ireland to follow the tragic story of Ana Kriegel. The murderers in this case are going to be referred to as Boy A and Boy B because of their age. They were only 13 years old when this case took place, and in Ireland, their information and identities were completely forbidden to be left to the public. I, of course, want to give a trigger warning because the content up ahead can be upsetting to some people, so if that's not for you, go ahead and click out. Other than that, grab your cup of coffee, relax, and let's dive in. Anastasia was born in Russia in 2004, and she was immediately placed in an orphanage. At 2 years old, she was adopted by Geraldine and Patrick Kriegel, who lived in Ireland. The new parents kept Anastasia's name, and they wanted to make sure that they honored her Russian culture. Anna had a few health issues. She had a tumor above her right ear that she needed surgery on and to have it removed. And this operation left her almost fully deaf in that ear, and it also affected her vision as well. Anna was a really, really happy child, but as she got older, her peers weren't as forgiving. They weren't as understanding and accepting of her differences, and she was bullied a lot online. They would make fun of her for her height. She was 5'8", so already at that age, she was very young. She was, pretty tall. And they also made fun of the fact that she was adopted. This affected Anna mentally and emotionally in different ways. She showed the way that it affected her by doing certain things that others would see as odd behavior. She painted a black eye on herself, and she was also caught making a couple fake social media accounts and bullying herself. Her mom thought that she was just trying to express herself and the way that she felt inside from all of the actual bullying from her peers. And on one occasion, this did come out as a self-harm incident. She did let her teacher know that she was having suicidal thoughts, and they handled that. Anna's parents and teachers actually had a meeting about her starting secondary school and how they were really worried about the bullying and how innocent she was. So they were terrified that she would be the target for bullies, and they were right. The kids didn't even wait for school to start before they started bullying her. During the summer, a bunch of kids continually sent her sexually suggestive messages, and they would make fun of her for being adopted and tell her that she had a fake mom and dad. Her parents kept all of the messages and took it to the school, but nothing happened. Halloween of that year, Anna was volunteering at a disco for young children. She volunteered a lot. She was walking home, and 4 boys came up to her, and one of them repeatedly asked her for sex and hit her on her backside, and she came home bawling her eyes out. She was terrified. Her mom took it to the police, but the boy only received a warning. Anna, despite the brutality of her peers, she stayed a really kind-hearted girl. She was sweet. She enjoyed hanging around her family and was really a homebody, but of course she longed to have friends of her own, to be able to go out and be wanted by kids her age. Because of Anna's behavior issues, the drawing the black eye, making the fake social media accounts, her mom had all of her passwords to her computer, her phone, her social media accounts, everything that she had, her mom had passwords to. So her mom would regularly check her phone, and it wasn't long after these incidents that happened that her mom actually found a picture of Anna being tied up to a chair and her mouth duct taped, and she was blindfolded. Her mom questioned her about it, and Ana just said that her and another girl were pretending that she was kidnapped and in trouble because she wanted to see if this boy would come save her. It was really obvious that she was having some issues, and her parents wanted to get her some help. She needed extra emotional support. They reached out to Kildare Youth Services, who they actually denied Ana because she self-harmed before. What had happened was she cut herself with some scissors, but her parents thought that she was actually just copying a boy, and it wasn't out of her own thoughts. It was kind of just copying what someone else did. So the next place that they reached out to was the PETA House. And this is a charity that helps people who self-harm or who are suicidal. And Ana was accepted, and she did really well there. The staff acknowledged Ana as being a very low suicidal risk. And after just 6 sessions, she got accepted into the Kildare Youth Services. The morning of Ana's disappearance was just like any other. Ana woke up, she put on her school uniform, she sat down for some breakfast, and she reminded her mom that she needed a note to get out of school at 2:30 because she had a counseling appointment at Kildare Youth Services. Her mom wrote the note and said their usual goodbyes. After counseling, Ana came home and she grabbed a snack and went right up to her room. Her and her mom talked to each other every single day, multiple times a day, so Ana gave her a phone call, which wasn't weird at all, but her mom didn't answer because she was in a meeting, so she texted Ana letting her know that she was busy and that she'd call her on her way home. Ana's dad was outside when he heard their doorbell ring. It was Boy B asking for Ana. Her dad saw the two of them whispering in the doorway, but he really thought nothing of it. After she ran upstairs and came back down with a sweatshirt on, she let him know that she would be back really soon. He reminded her that she had some exams coming up and she needed to study for that. She told him no one told her that she needed to study, so she didn't know about that, but she would be back soon. And he believed her. It seemed like she really was going to be back really quickly. And then he realized that he never asked where she was going. So he ran out of the door and looked down the street, but she was already way too far to yell for her. And he could see that she was walking behind Boy B. So they weren't walking together and they weren't talking. So he did notice that because he did think like it just looked weird that they didn't seem like they were walking together or even talking to each other, and she was behind him. Ana's mom did try to give her a call back on her way home from work, but it went straight to voicemail. So when she got home and Patrick and his dad told her how Boy B came to the door for her, she got concerned immediately because she knew that Ana and this boy, they were not friends. So there was really no reason for him to be there, let alone for her to actually go somewhere with him. It was around 5:30 when Ana's mom texted her, "Home now," but there was no response. So after just a few minutes went by, her mom messaged her again and said, "Answer me now or I'm calling the police." At this point, Ana was only gone for a half hour, so her mom knew that it was a little ridiculous to go to the police at that point. She did have really bad feelings about this, but she didn't want to seem like just an overbearing mother. So she went out to the nearby park and she looked for her there, but she didn't see anyone. So she came back home and she actually looked up Boy B on Facebook and she was trying to find his address. She asked around, but no one knew. It wasn't on Facebook, so she was unsuccessful with that. After just a few hours and still no answer, Ana's parents reached out to a friend who was a retired detective. They asked him what their next move should be, and he told them to go straight to the police. So that's what they did. They went to the police and they let them know that it was extremely unusual for her to be out with someone, and it was not like her to not answer her phone. She always answered her phone, whether if she missed their phone call or took a little bit to text, she always answered them, even when she was mad at them. It was never that long without hearing from her. So the police did take this seriously, but they didn't want to rush in anything because it was only a few hours and kids did that all the time. So they didn't want to make a big deal out of it until a little bit more time went by. So they looked up Boy B's address in their system. They went to his house. Boy B was home, and he told the officer that he did go for Ana earlier and that they walked to the park, and he left while she stayed there around 5:40. Ana's parents searched near and around the park, speaking to anyone they could, and when nothing turned up, the police made an official missing persons report. The following day, Ana's family continued to search for her, and Sergeant John Doon went to speak with Boy B again. This time, Boy B mentioned that he was actually asked to go pick up Ana by Boy A. Ana had a crush on Boy A, and everyone knew that. It was said that Boy A wanted to meet up with him so he can let her know face to face that he wasn't interested in her. So Boy B went and picked up Ana, walked to the park, and then he left her there with Boy A. Ana's family gathered different pictures of her to use for media purposes. They made sure to include one with her wearing that same black and white hoodie that she wore that night. And as soon as her missing pictures were put out into the public, leads began to pour in. There was a lot of misinformation that they needed to sift through and follow up on the ones that sounded promising. Sergeant Doon continued to search at the park where Boy B said that he left. And he decided to search the railroad area, and he didn't find anything. But on his way back towards the park, he ran into a man and his son. And the man actually suggested that he go look near the local sewage plant because that's where a lot of young kids hung out. And it wasn't until later that day that the sergeant realized that he was talking to Boy A and his father. At this point in the investigation, both boys were looked at as just witnesses. The police just wanted to gather as much info as they could. The sergeant decided to bring both boys with him to the park, and as they started walking, Sergeant Doon realized that Boy B was actually taking them in a different direction than he did the first time. The boys took the officers to a path near a BMX track, and as soon as they stopped, the boys shared a look with each other that just really didn't sit right to the sergeant or the other police officers that were with them. And that right there was the first sign that something was up. They weren't telling the whole truth. So they decided that they were going to take the boys to the station and separate them. They wanted to get a formal statement from each of them. And of course, the boys only being 13 years old, they were accompanied by their parents. And Boy B told the police the same exact story that he told them earlier that day. Boy A gave the police a little bit more of a detailed statement. He said that him and Boy B were best friends, and Boy B had given him a phone call after school, and Boy A was doing chores at the time and he wasn't able to have anyone over. So when he finished with his chores, he was going to be they planned to go to the park. So Boy A was at the park already, and Boy B came with Ana. And that's when Ana said to him, there's something that I want to ask you. And he knew Ana from school, but they weren't friends. And she asked him if he wanted to go out with her. Said that he was actually really surprised by her bluntness of the question. He did know that she liked him, but didn't think that she would come out and say that. So he said he wanted to tell her as gently as possible that he wasn't interested in her. He said that she didn't answer and she walked off, looking annoyed and sad at the same time. Now at this point, it's said that Boy B had already left them, so they were in the park by themselves. They had this conversation. Ana leaves and Boy B started walking home. He says this is where he was attacked by two males. One grabbed him by the shoulder and pushed him down, and then the other one started kicking him. He said that he was able to get up and he kicked one in the head and he made a run for it. The police noted that Boy A did have injuries consistent of an assault, but his description of kicking one in the head sounded more like a teenage boy's fantasy than an actual reality of how an assault would go. So something felt off about this whole thing. But this alleged assault now needed to be investigated. So Boy A was asked to go to a sketch artist and tell them what these boys looked like, and witnesses that were around that area were asked and they didn't see anyone that looked like them, and they even got the security cameras and they didn't see anyone like that. The police were also able to collect a couple things off of him because of the assault investigation. The next day, the search and investigation got a lot more intense. All people on duty in stations in North Dublin and Kildare specialist search teams were brought in, started to search every area of water, and they surveyed all the traffic cameras to watch Anna's movements. So the very next day, after they brought all these people in to investigate, the police came upon an abandoned farmhouse, which was built on 100 acres in an area known locally as Coldblow. Sergeant Birchall and his 4-person search team searched the surrounding buildings while Officer White went into the main house. He walked in the first room. It was dark and the windows were all boarded up. The only light was shining through the little slits in the boards. Officer White could immediately smell blood, and he thought he saw something in the middle of the room. He thought it was either a mannequin or something terrible. He called out, but there was no response, so he stepped a little bit closer, and as soon as he was able to confirm what he thought he saw, he stepped out of the room and called for assistance. Sergeant Birchall rushed in and confirmed that that was Ana Kriegel, and she was completely naked except for her black socks. Anna's clothing and pieces of her iPhone were scattered all around the room, and next to her was a cement block and large stick, both with blood all over them. There was also blood on the walls and the carpet, and a piece of insulation tape was partially wrapped around her neck. She had 3 fingers stuck inside the tape as if she was trying to get it off. Every inch of that room was looked over and any evidence was taken in. Anna's autopsy revealed that she had over 50 injury sites on her body. She had bruises, lacerations all over her, and the most serious ones were to her head, neck, and face. It was concluded that Anna died from blunt force trauma to her head and neck. There were also signs of compression to her neck. Other injuries that she had suggested that there was penetration or attempted penetration. Police suspected that Anna was beaten down to the ground with a stick shortly after entering the room. She was then hit 4 times with the concrete block, and they assumed that she was pulled over to where there was actually lighting in the room from the slits in the boards, and that's where the sexual assault happened. Anna had false nails on and they were scattered all over the room, but this let them know that she fought her attacker really hard. They collected tons of forensic material at the scene, but nothing was pointing to a suspect. All the fingerprints and blood belonged to Anna. Then they finally discovered that Anna had some semen on her shirt. So the focus returned back to the boys. They did suspect them, but they wanted to wait until they had any evidence or proof that at least one of them was in that room with her. So a few days later, the police were able to confirm that boy A had Anna's blood on his shoes. And like I said, they were able to collect a couple things from him because of the alleged assault that he said happened. So they were able to collect his shoes, and they had that evidence that put him with Anna. They had also taken boy A's phone, and on it they found screenshots of a list of YouTube videos, including the 15 most gruesome torture methods in history, horror films that will blow everything away, and Until Dawn, Get Jessica's Clothes Off. There was also a result for Jeff the Killer, which was actually a short story about a teenager who murdered his family. Now, really having those things on your phone doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go kill someone or that you killed someone. But the search that they found on his phone that made those ones relevant was abandoned places in Lucan. So the police were able to get a warrant for both boys just a week after Anna was found. And because of their ages, they wanted to keep everything very private and handle things a little differently than normal. So both the boys' parents were told that the boys were going to be arrested, and they were able to bring them in themselves instead of the police coming knocking on the door and taking them in and making a big deal out of it. What the parents weren't told was that when they were at the station with their sons, the police were going to be looking in their houses. They had a search warrant, so they were able to go in and do that when everyone was out of the house. So when the police officers went to serve the search warrants and look in the houses, They were told that they needed to use discretion, and they went in rented cars. They went in normal clothing, and they tried their best not to bring anything outside of the house that looked suspicious, like in the bags that they usually use. They put the evidence bags in other bags so it didn't look suspicious. Boy A had his dad and his lawyer with him in the interrogation room, and the first question he was asked was, "Do you know the difference between right and wrong?" Boy A responded with, "Leaving the door open for someone is right. Tripping somebody up or stealing a chocolate bar is wrong." He then explained the difference between truth and lies. Truth is if you tell somebody what happened. A lie is if you don't tell someone what happened. When he was asked about his personal interests, he mentioned anatomy, the human body, and inner life, the skeleton. He then proceeded to talk about what happened that day, and it was pretty much the same story Boy B told them, that he met Anna in the park and wasn't with her when she went missing. The detective told Boy A that Anna's blood was found on his shoe, and Boy A responded with, "Are you joking? You can't be serious." And the detective let him know that there was only one place that he can get Anna's blood on his shoe, and it was in that room where Anna was killed. But of course, he denied everything. He was asked about the search results on his phone, and Boy A said that the torture method search came up when he was looking up horror movies. The police could tell right away that Boy A wasn't going to budge. He was going to tell them any information that they wanted to hear, so they wanted to turn their focus on Boy B. So they had already spoken to Boy B multiple times, and they knew that they had to start getting a little bit more intense with him. So they had Boy B, a 13-year-old, answering questions for 10 hours over 2 days. He stayed in a room that they cleared out in the station with his mom. This is because he wasn't able to be held anywhere else where there is adult inmates, so they just cleared out like an office area for him, and he stayed with his mom. At first, Boy B just stuck with his original story, but when he was told that there was no CCTV footage of him and Anna going in the direction that he said that they went, he just tried to claim that there was something wrong with the video. But it wasn't until after the night that he spent alone with his mom in the station, his lawyer told detectives that Boy B reflected on his responses and he wanted to change some things up. He let them know that he was going to tell them the truth of what happened, and that what he said yesterday was a lie. He said that him and Anna met Boy A at the BMX track near the park and not in the courtyard like he said previously. This is when the detectives knew that they could turn up the heat on him because he admitted to lying. So you can constantly bring that up anytime something is said. You can really put pressure, especially on a little kid, that you don't believe anything that comes out of the mouth then. Up until this point, Boy B stayed extremely calm. He was very intelligent, very well spoken, and the detectives said that it felt like they were talking more to a young adult than a 13-year-old. But the detectives started to show him some evidence, and one being a photograph of the crime scene, just with Anna's body pixelated out. And Boy B immediately put his head in his hands and said, "Jesus, one of my closest friends." And then he quickly let them know that he wasn't talking about Anna, he was talking about Boy A. During Boy B's 5th interview, the detective was starting to get extremely frustrated with him, and he was trying to put the guilt trip on him a little bit, saying that he owes it to his parents to tell the truth, he owes it to Anna to tell the truth, he even owes it to himself, because unfortunately a young girl was brutally murdered. Boy B turned and asked his mom if she could leave the room, and the detective told him that that can't happen because you're underage. Boy B took a deep breath and he said that Boy A and Anna went into the house and he had left, and as he was leaving he heard a scream, and he described it as a really strong scream, the strongest scream he's ever heard in his life. And he said that Boy A and Anna went into that room, and that's when Boy A told him that he needs to leave. Instead of leaving, Boy B decided to stick around, and he was kind of looking at things in the abandoned house, and he heard some shuffling sounds, and he wanted to go peek in on them because he thought he was going to see them having, you know, and he was curious about that. But when he peeked in, he saw Boy A kind of flip Ana, he said, and that's when he started to choke her and pull off her clothes. And Ana was screaming to stop, don't do this. And that's when both Ana and Boy A turned and saw Boy B standing in the doorway, and he ran away. Detectives felt like this still wasn't the full truth, but it was enough and as close as they were going to get to the truth. So they went in and they let Boy A know that all the blame was being put on him, and they showed him copies of Boy B's testimony. And all Boy A said was that he was lying. 10 days after Ana was found, they officially charged Boy A with murder. The boy said nothing. They continued to find evidence against him. They found a book bag in his room that had gloves, knee pads, shin guards, a scarf, and a homemade mask. This would be called the murder kit. Ana's blood was found on the inside of the mask and on knee pads and the gloves and the book bag itself. In Boy A's phone, he had over 12,000 pornographic images and several videos. One video that caught their attention was a title called Anastasia and another video called Russian Teen. After the results for the semen that was found on Ana's shirt came back as a match to Boy A, they were able to also charge him with aggravated sexual assault. And that is around the time that they also arrested Boy B. Boy B let the police know that he and Boy A actually had a conversation prior to the murder, that Boy A asked him if he wanted to kill somebody. And Boy B told him no and asked him, well, who would you kill? Said Ana Kriegel. And Boy B just said, in your dreams. He really thought that Boy A was just being weird, and that was kind of like who he was. So he didn't take it seriously at all. And when he was asked why he didn't do anything to help Ana, he just said that he froze, that he didn't know what to do. He was terrified, and all he could think was to run. He said that he felt terrible for not helping her, but he didn't know and didn't think that Boy A was actually going to murder her. Both boys were eventually granted bail. Before the trial started, Boy A's lawyer applied to have a separate trial for both boys. And this was because that they thought that Boy B's statements in his interviews and in interrogations would alter the minds of the jury, and because he was constantly accused by Boy B, that they would then subconsciously think he was guilty. The judge reminded Boy A's lawyer that the interviews of one defendant cannot be used against another defendant. So that petition was denied. Boy B's defense team had him examined by a psychologist specialized in childhood trauma, and he was ultimately diagnosed with PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. They said that the PTSD contributed to him lying in his previous statements, and that's why he did that, and that he really had no knowledge of what was going to happen when he took Ana there. He did tell the psychologist a little bit more than he told the police. He told them that he did see Boy A standing over Ana with his bottoms undone, and that he saw Ana gasping and then stop. So they were nervous to use the psychologist again, because it would show that he once again didn't tell the whole truth in his interrogation. When the pathology evidence was talked about during the trial, this goes over every single injury inflicted on Ana. The boys were actually excused from the courtroom, which I don't think that should happen. I think they should have to sit there and see what happened to her, because why should they not have those images in their head for the rest of their lives? During the court, Boy A sat with his dad, and he would a lot of times rest his head on his dad's shoulder. And Boy B sat with his mom, and he never let go of her hand. They would get a 15-minute break every hour, and at one point Boy B was said to have a panic attack during trial, and the ambulance had to come, and that was during his the playbacks of his interviews with the police when he was lying. Boy A got sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of release until after 12 years, and Boy B got 15 years in prison with no possibility of release until after 8 years. I want to know how you feel about this case. Kids, juveniles are a little bit different. People feel different about sentencing and what should and shouldn't be for them, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on it. Is it enough? Is it not enough? Please let me know. And like I always say, if you have any suggestions of cases, put them in the comments below, or you can email me them. I always love when I get suggestions. This video, hit the bell notification so you can get notified every single time I upload a video, and hit that subscribe button. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.